If you're anything like me, there was probably a moment in your life when you realized that mental health is as crucial as physical health, and that maybe, just maybe, our community doesn't address it as well as we should. It's usually after you've been through something pretty tough yourself and understood just how close all of us are to everything going quite wrong quite quickly. In this world where the conversation around mental health is gaining momentum, which is good, there are still barriers that need to be dismantled, and one major barrier is the stigma surrounding men seeking help. And this is where Dr Zac Siedler comes in. He's a really interesting cat. Dr Zac Siedler is a trailblazing clinical psychologist. He's dedicated himself to addressing the overlooked crisis of male mental health. Zac has done groundbreaking work on an effective therapy model specifically designed for men and hopes to break down the barriers that prevent them from seeking support. Za'c Developed Men in Mind. It's a world-first online training program for therapists, which is a program that aims to increase those therapists' confidence and skills to engage with and connect with and respond more effectively to the clients that come to see them. Now, like many of us, Zac's purpose was locked in when he was just quite young. At 11, Zac had witnessed his own father struggle with depression, which he does touch on today. So it's no surprise that he's on a mission. He's on a mission to transform the landscape of mental health. Today, we also delve into the impact of masculinity on men's mental health, the role of societal expectations on men, and how we can work together to support the well-being of the men in our lives. He's got a really insightful perspective, Zac does, and he offers quite a fresh look at some complicated subjects while also providing hope and practical solutions that can make a difference. He's got a pretty good day job, Zac. He's the Global Director of Men's Health Research at Movember. Yeah, big gig. He's also Senior Research Fellow with Origin at the University of Melbourne. Today, Zac and I are going to speak about the impact of social media on men's health, the importance of introspection and understanding the needs that you might have, the role that purpose plays in life, the need for a sense of achievement, and also the need for safe spaces for men to discuss their emotions and struggles. And of course, we also talk about Movember, the work that Movember is doing in improving men's mental health. Movember are fantastic. They're celebrating 20 years this year. And as we close in on the hairiest month of them all, I would encourage you wholeheartedly to start important conversations, raise funds, save lives. Sign up at Movember.com. I'm proud to be a Movember ambassador. They do fantastic work. I love working with them. And I think it's vital work. It is important to talk about all aspects of men's health, including setting out what is at stake. So this conversation does touch on addiction, it does touch on self-harm and suicide. So if you're in Australia and you need to chat to someone, you can call Lifeline on 13 11 14. Outside Australia, call your doctor, call your local support line. Zac's a great bloke. This chat is really special. I know you're going to get a lot out of it. I'm glad you came. Thank you for being here. You work for Movember.
I do.
Zac, what's your title at Movember?
I'm the Global Director of Men's Health Research.
Global Director of Men's Health Research, and yet a full beard.
I know. It's not November yet, mate.
We are recording this a few days out. You have a fiancé?
I do.
Has your fiancé met you sans beard?
I thought you were going to say, does she have a moustache? But depends on the time.
That's a very personal question.
That's fair. She has she's met me sans beard with a moustache, and I bought her some cash rash cream, as we call it, because it's a sight. I've also got some serious Borat vibes when I go mustachioed. So just try to, it's in my contract though. It says, if you can, you must.
Really?
Yeah, got to do it.
If you can, you must.
Got to do it.
Wow.
It's an important symbol of connection, man, of coming together, of mateship, of self-betterment, of masculinity. That's what we're about.
So Movember, the story goes that it was a bunch of blokes sitting around going, what's a fashion that's never come back? Why? Oh, moustaches. And there's a bunch of them. They some of the ex-ADF guys, and they grew some moustaches, and it was hilarious. And they decided to do it for charity, and they ended up with like this humongous amount of money. And when they gave it to, I believe, the Prostate Cancer Council of Victoria, I think it was like $60,000, they said, this is the largest amount of money anyone's ever given us at once. And they realized they were onto something, and pretty quickly that a lot of
governance.
A lot of governance comes along with this sort of thing. And then they realized, well, hang on a second, if we're giving this grant to you and this grant to you, but you're researching the same thing, that's half the money. Hang on a second. And they started to figure out to do some really clever things with the way research was done. At what point did you first, I guess, become aware of Movember?
I've been able to grow a moustache since I was 12. Given
you're
if you couldn't tell my exactly.
Did you get in trouble at school for not shaving?
Oh yeah, they would just drop. It's funny because it now happens at Movember as well. I come in, and if I'm not clean on the sides during November, someone drops a Gillette razor on my desk, and it's like, go and clean up.
I went to school with a bloke like that, Chris. He'd get, like, after lunch, I get a
morning shadow.
Yeah, he'd get write-outs.
Yeah.
And he'd like, but I shaved this morning, sir.
Yeah. I was like, this is madness. I'm not to blame here.
To be so hirsute. To be so hirsute.
But I've known about Movember for over a decade. We're in our 20th year now.
Yeah.
And I've been working there for about 5 years. But men's health, men's mental health has been my jam for a very long time.
Why is that?
It's always interesting to reflect on what comes to mind when that question's asked. But I've always been obsessed with gender and masculinity. I did gender studies at uni. I was the only straight white male in the class. I still think I'm the only straight white male to have a major in gender studies from Sydney Uni.
Are you identified as a straight white male?
Yeah. But
it's a joke.
Of course,
okay?
Of course.
It's a joke because it's hilarious.
We're in a safe space. And I was always interested in why. I had a lot of female friends. I'm sure we had a similar. I did music and drama and that type of stuff, which was always what's going on. Let's talk emotions. Let's talk about vulnerability, etc. And then I started to realize that my mates were talking in totally different ways. Struggling with totally different things, and I was witnessing at home as well. I've got 2 older brothers and my dad who suffered from depression for a very long time, and just witnessing how everyone was relating to each other and the impact that it was having on everyone around us. And I was like, this doesn't seem right. This doesn't seem to be going the way that it should be. And when I joined Movember, I said to them, I was like, this idea that men just need to talk more, just need to open up and everything will be fine, I just call bullshit. I just think that's a really simplistic narrative. And I've witnessed a lot of people talking. I'm a therapist. I've been in the room. And there has to be more nuance than that. There has to be an understanding that if we tell men to open up, people need to be ready to listen. And, I went through a journey. I lost my dad 10 years ago this year to suicide.
Oh, man. Sorry.
Thanks, Osha. And he engaged with the health system. He was a GP himself. He knew what was going on. He could talk about it in certain ways, but there was a generational thing. There was a shame thing. And I was like, enough of this shit. I'm fed up. We're losing over 2,000 guys a year to suicide in this country. And
6 a day.
6 a day. Nearing 7,
Oh, that's too many. Pete.
It's way too many. And, we know from that 130 or so close contacts are washed up in the ripple effect.
Of every person.
And all of us know someone. That's just the way that this works. And so there is I've got this really, this fire in my belly to go, this isn't just some mental health crisis. This is a crisis of identity. This is a crisis of how men are brought up, of how they're able to discuss what's happening for them and how the world is reacting. And I think we are in a moment right now where the way that the world is dealing with, speaking about and interacting with men is harming them.
I can really relate to, I'm one of 4 boys. And I went to an all-boys school, and I never understood the communication between me and the guys at school, where a really, really hard punch in the arm was supposed to say that you liked me and that I was allowed to hang out with you. It just fucking hurt. Don't hit me, Tim. That really hurt.
Hug me, mate.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Not necessarily let's sit and talk about our feelings, but can't you just say something? Like, hey, that was good. Oh, you fucking do it. Like, ow. Like, it is quite limiting. So this idea of men are men and blah, blah, blah. Like, do you have to start deconstructing that and figure out hang on a second, when did this begin? Like, surely when chivalry was supposed to be, like, this is the aspiration you can be as a man. Chivalry is a mixture of power, it's a mixture of wisdom, and it's a mixture of selflessness. All right, when did that stop being the thing? And when did that start being, oh, you fucking snowflake, you cucked? When did that happen?
Yeah, I feel like there has just been a slow shift. You know, the way we talk about masculinity is that it doesn't actually have a very good definition. Its main definition is anti-femininity. Like, it is born out of
there's literally a protest erupting at UNSW right now.
Straight up.
Against the MAFs, the men anti-feminist society, whatever.
Yeah. But I think that it's that idea. It's like, don't be this. It doesn't tell you what to be. It tells you what not to do. And what not to do has lots of rules and regulations that, you know, are imbued with endless homophobia and all of this shit that we dealt with at school. And so what we're witnessing now is the Tates and Petersons and Rogans of the world who have this platform are able to go, all right, we're going to tell men a very clear, strict doctrine of rules and regulations that they can comply by. Make your bed, you know, whatever else it might be, rather than here is this expansive, multiple, diverse, beautiful, constantly shifting ways of being. It isn't black and white. It isn't this thing that you can just wake up and put on a mask and rock up for the day.
Yeah.
But the idea that history has led us here, I think that it's been a limiting of what men can be. Because I think if you look all the way back, you know, the Greeks were the Greeks and Romans were extremely emotional guys. They had stoicism, sure, but they also had oratory and poetry and, you know, there was diversity. There were different ways of being. And we need to just find this innate part of ourselves rather than turning it off constantly.
They had a lot of hand-to-hand combat as well.
Oh, yeah.
Like, there was a lot of stabby, swordy.
Badges.
Like, there was a lot of that.
For sure.
And I wonder, look, I'm not saying that we need to do that, but I wonder if that kind of hand-to-hand, face-to-face, you know, I've got a blade, one of us is going to die, very real threat of that kind of violence force people to be like, I might just back away a bit here and try and see what my friend here is trying to tell me rather than go, well, fuck you.
Yeah.
And because then there's death. That was it. I wonder, but that's
I realised that I just did what everyone is talking about, which is bring up the Roman Empire.
That blows my mind. I don't think about
crazy.
I don't think about that much.
Never.
I truly don't.
Yeah.
Except for that Mel Brooks film, which I really liked. History of the World Part 1.
Yeah.
It was very good. Oh, and Life of Brian. That's kind of the only two times I ever think about. Oh, that and when I read Marcus Aurelius, which I do quite often. Okay, so that's the only 3 times I think about it. But but I understand. All right. So the make your bed thing. All right. That I cannot believe how often those YouTube videos get served to me when I'm trying to find ways to make a bicycle pump water bottle rocket for my son, which we did yesterday and was awesome. But I get it, you know, because so much, as was evidenced in the Barbie movie, so much of what it feels like to be not a woman, the cultural communication around it is like, well, that's wrong. You know, you can't be in a gym and look anywhere but the floor or you're a perv. You can't stand at a bus stop waiting for a bus by yourself with 4 other female school students and be anything but a pedo. No, I'm just a fucking guy standing waiting for a bus. All right?
These rules that are just and what I'm witnessing, you know, whenever I write about this stuff, I get so many mums who reach out to me who go, my son won't go to parties anymore because he's terrified of being accused of this or that. You know, we live within this culture where men feel that they can do nothing right. And plenty of women, understandably, are saying, fuck off, pull it together, work it out, come and talk with us. But then you've got an underlying lack of communicative ability. So the boys don't even know what to say. They don't even know where to begin, and they fuck it up They say the wrong thing, and then they get shut down and shamed and distanced forever. So we're getting to a point now where you've got a vast majority of young men who have pretty, values-based ideals about how to go about relating to the world. Yeah, they are about equality. They are understanding of women's, empowerment. They know about equality more broadly. But if you then ask them what they think society wants from men, they go, well, they don't think that a gay guy is as much of a man as a straight man. They don't think that a man should be at home dealing with the kids. They don't think that, he should be cooking, he should be the breadwinner, all of that stuff. And it's that gap we talk about a lot in Movember, which is the perception gap, which is that men have these munificent objectives. They have these desires for self-betterment and to look after others. But they believe that society is telling them that they need to be this traditional, unattainable man. And it's that gap which is causing great distress. So what I always say whenever I rock up in a locker room, for instance, which is the quintessential, stereotypical, horrible place, I guess, for masculinity to breed.
Or the group chat.
Exactly. Oh man, the group chat. Is to go, all right, you're in here and you've got these values, but the guy next to you has them as well, and the other guy, but none of you are talking about it. And so instead, you're just making misogynistic jokes because you think that that's what everyone wants to hear. But everyone's fucking uncomfortable.
You're right.
The man next to you and the man next to him break the cycle.
And that's surely got to play a role in a help-seeking behaviour when it comes to, things going wrong with your body or things kind of starting to go skew with the way you're thinking about the world.
100%. And that is the thing. It's like, how do we understand what is going on within our body if we can't actually be able to understand how to communicate with others? Because our needs are not deemed central in any of this dialogue. It's like, just suck it up and move on. And I think that there's a societal, everyone's like, oh, if you cry more, if you do this, we're going to all open up to you. Brené Brown always talks about this idea that it's like, we want men to be more vulnerable. We ask for them to be more vulnerable, but then they just tip over and we go, no, turn it off. Turn it off. Take that back. That's too many tears. It's like you've hit the line here. So it's like, all right, you've opened the fucking floodgates.
Yeah.
That's what's going on here. We've all got this deep well of emotionality within us, and there is no on-off switch. And so if you're asking for it, mankind has the capacity for this, but it will be drowning in many ways because there are decades of repressed emotions that require a place to be.
When it comes to, I guess, the way that we talk about masculinity, there's only one qualifier we ever hear about masculinity, and people are saying it in their mind. It's the name of a Britney Spears song. What's the alternative? You rarely hear masculinity. It's only ever toxic masculinity. Where's the alternative? What's an alternative way to speak about it?
Yeah. I love the fact that you're looking for an alternative, because there needs to be an alternative, because it's a media-created term. It's where it comes from. It's not science-backed. It's not backed by lived experience. It's not what men are feeling or experiencing. And what we're witnessing now is that this term is divisive. It is pissing people off. And what I always talk about whenever I'm discussing, domestic and family violence, it's like this is a men's health issue. And this will only be dealt with men being central in a movement to eradicate this behaviour. And if you need men involved, don't tell them that they're broken, toxic and problematic. Align with their desire for self-betterment, to look after others, with their altruistic intent, And so instead of talking about toxic masculinity, it's like, instead of washing the newspapers filled with Weinsteins and Trumps and all of these men that are doing bad shit constantly, where are the good men? They're everywhere. Why do we not talk about it? Why does no one care? Why is it not of interest? And that's really our aim at Movember, is to show through this movement, through togetherness, through ambassadors like yourself who are doing good work. It's like, how do you amplify this narrative to go, actually, healthy masculinity is everywhere. It's on display, you know. We don't need positive masculinity. Lots of people talk about that. I don't rate that because positive has a negative, and then we end up in this binary again. Healthy masculinities, this idea that there are multiple ways of being that are going to be healthy or unhealthy, that are going to impact you and the people you love. Lean into that, find it, and be flexible. Because flexibility is not innately embedded within masculinity. Masculinity is fundamentally rigid. It is you do this or you do that. You know, you need to be moving towards this idea of what a man is, or you're failing. And we talk about precarious manhood, the idea that you're constantly on the edge of a cliff. You know, there is this idea that we're going to give you man cards if you go and, you know, you play footy, you go and you do this, you're going to accrue things. But you're constantly at risk of having them taken away. Constantly, you know, unless you get off that whole game altogether, which is a very hard thing for any modern man to do, which is that if you want male friends, if you want to feel included and socially connected, unless you can pull them all along with you into a new movement of masculinity, you have to play by the rules.
When you talk about amplifying models of manhood or masculinity that we otherwise don't, we only ever kind of profile, your fucking strong arm, your Putins, or he's dead now, Berlusconi's, or
I thought you said Putin's dead. I was like,
or
conspiracy fan.
Small man, such a small man.
Yeah, tiny.
Like I think he was on a pony.
He's on a pedestal or a pony.
A pony. It had to have been a pony.
Yeah.
Because I've seen him stand next to other people. And when he's on that horse with no shirt on, it's fucking amazing.
Yeah.
Have you seen the one who's releasing the tigers?
Yeah.
Fucking hell. Like that is like, there's like literally out of a montage scene from Scarface. You know? It's like, what are you doing, buddy?
Yeah.
But he had to, I wonder if they're like how, you know, when Prince would cast backup dancers, they'd have to find people who were shorter than 5'0", because Prince was 5'0". Like, why are you going to find people like that to make you look tall? It must have been a pony. When it comes to amplifying healthy masculinity, when it comes to amplifying what it means to be that, I'm going to say a name, and I put it to you, Zac, Dr. Zac, if that's your name. I put it to you, Dr. Zac Siedler. Bandit healer. Bandit healer is the epitome of what it is to be a great, flawed yet, you know, vulnerable yet powerful leader, dad, husband, father, worker, cook, support network, provider, protector, Australian, human male, even though he's a dog in a cartoon, that has ever existed.
100%.
He's amazing.
Yeah.
Joe Brum's a fucking genius, man.
And it's the ability to show things going wrong. It's the ability to admit that it's going to be ups and downs. And that is the narrative that is it's always been linear. It's like, no, I get a job and then I fucking dominate until I become CEO, you know? Or it's, I play soccer and I don't stop until I'm the best. There doesn't seem to be this understanding. And I talk about this a lot when it comes to footy players who are talking about their mental health. Yeah. There seems to be this narrative at the moment where people go, all right, I struggled with my mental health. And I think you're really unique here in comparison to many other men who talk about, I suffered from anxiety or I suffered from depression. They never talk about the journey that they're on now and the fact that this is like a lifelong journey that they're going to be struggling with, ups and downs, that it's a part of them and they're learning how to live with it. Instead, we're still at the point where if you are talking about something that you've been through, you have to have conquered it. You have to have come past it, through it, and beaten it.
I put it to you that I get to conquer something every day, you know?
Yeah.
And some days it's a harder battle than others, but every day I'll get to bed alive without having drunk or used, without having, you know, if I've hurt someone, made them not understand that I'm sorry and try to make it better, try to help someone, got help for myself. Every day other than that, I was like, oh, I have won the day.
And that's a huge win.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's literally it.
But it is a daily grind.
I don't know if it's a grind, because the life that I get to live because of it is amazing. Yeah. You know, it was when I was not doing those things and I was ignoring those things. That's when, you know, it started to fuck me right up. You know, it's the same like if you got yourself a secondhand WRX from somebody that cost you $1,000 and you're like, oh, this is all right. Yeah, they say, oh, yeah, but the front left wheel's welded on. You can never change the front tyre. You can never change the front wheel. It's got a bit of a lean to it. It's like, free car, I'll take it. You'll spend the rest of your time driving that car just adjusting to the right, knowing this is what I need to do to stay straight. It's fine. I can still get from here to there. It's fine. Other cars go straight. That's okay. But I guess just to the right. I guess that keeps me more present on the road. There we go. Fucking fine.
But the guy next to you's aircon doesn't work, and the guy behind you, his window doesn't fucking open. It's like we've all got something in now. Yeah,
everyone's got something.
A vehicle of life.
I think for me, it's the idea of, and it's a very, you've referred to it a few times that the fundamental differences between masculine, thinking, I guess, and feminine thinking, which has been co-opted and pulled apart by the three men whose names you mentioned earlier. The differences between
who shall not be named.
The differences between worldview and the way people see themselves. It is binary. It is on-off. It is problem, not problem. Problem solved. Challenge defeated. That's a part of it. It's not the idea of I draw a huge amount of value from the process. All right? If I play footy only to win the premiership, then that's a very small chance that I'll ever feel satisfied by this thing that I'm doing that's taking me away from my family and my friends, probably going to put my body at huge risk. And the chances that I'll make a career out of this and buy the big house are very, very small, but anything that isn't me holding the cup is failure.
Yeah.
That's hard. Versus I get up and I play footy because I fucking love it. All right? And I get to be with my friends and I get to feel a little bit better about what I do every day. If a premiership comes at the end of it, that's also awesome, but it's okay if it doesn't happen. Like doing it for the process, doing it for the work itself. That, for me, that's the key. If I based myself on, attainment of values, attainment of goals or things, then it's external to me, and then I can't control it, and then things can get shitty. You know what I mean?
It will. Yeah. There's no intrinsic benefit to having that, to having that narrative by any means.
That's the word.
Yeah.
So we spoke about the locker room, the group chat, wherever it is. I've got these things that I'm worried about, but I'm afraid I can't talk about it. When it comes to things like I can't seem to not scream at other people when I'm in the car. It never used to happen, but now I just shout at cyclists. What is it that prevents us from going, man, I just get really angry when I drive now? What is it that prevents us from having those conversations?
Yeah. So I think that there's so many different reasons, obviously, that each guy is going to be going through, but something that we're in the same way that we look at moustaches as, some are grey, some are blonde, some are wispy as shit, and some are strong as. We see the way that guys are relating to the world as being a constant battle in some ways, where people, are trying to conquer their emotionality rather than understand it. And so, the fundamentals of psychology, what I've been inculcated in is this idea of self-reflection and insight. And so I once had a client, and this is something that really that brought me to Movember, because we do a lot of health literacy. We try to upskill early intervention and prevention, give them the skills to know what's happening, talk to their mates, be able to actually express what's happening. I had a client once and I asked him, I was like, you seem to be going through all of this stuff. Do you ever, when you're in the moment, just check in with yourself and go, what's happening right now? And he goes, what do you mean? I go, introspect. And he goes, what does that mean? And I go, the internal narrative where you're in your own head and you're discussing why I'm doing this and how I'm feeling. He goes, I've never done that.
What?
I go, that's kind of seems like a blessing in certain circumstances to just turn it off. But he did not have and had never cultivated an internal narrative such that his ability to, actually mediate his behavior, make those little tweaks that you are making every day, that I'm making every day, based on the way that people are responding to us, he couldn't do it. And I continue to see so many guys who do it 2, 3, 4 weeks later, months later, when shit has hit the fan and now they're forced to go, what was that? What we want, what we're seeking is when you're in the car, when you're screaming at somebody, we're not going to be able to stop everything. That's not going to happen. But we want you to know why it's happening. We want you to know what triggered it, why it matters to you that that person gets out of the way, and what is actually behind that. There's always something behind it, you know? And so I really want to make clear that I don't think anger is something to be feared. And that's something that, you know, I stress a lot in lots of the work that I do with other psychologists, because we know that guys don't really relate very well in therapy. It doesn't tend to go as well as it should in many circumstances. And we've got more and more guys coming into care. So we want to make sure that we wrap around them. But there are so many therapists that I train who go, I can't deal with male anger and aggression. And I'm like, what happens if it's healthy? They go, what's healthy? What does that mean? How can it be healthy? I'm like, there are reasons for men to be angry, you know, just like female rage is, you know, a huge thing that has historical, oppressive, disempowering, you know, roots. There is a reason that men should be feeling certain things, and we cannot condone it, but we also cannot shame it. We need to find that middle ground where we understand it. And when we're missing a trick, when we shut down male anger as overwhelming, frightening, whatever it might be, because if we push and we go, no, you're angry because you're actually just sad and you need to deal with that, he's never going to come to that, you know, understanding on his own. He needs you to sit with him in that moment and to wait for it to wash away, to be able to grapple with it before it overwhelms him.
Can you talk a bit about that, the idea of anger or aggression being okay, or being something that a man needs for, you know, I guess that I understand why people might be confronted by that. I certainly am. That's why I'm asking you, because the only relation that I have to that is like, well, anger and aggression is bad because I've just been hit, you know?
Yeah.
Hard, and I'm now very afraid or running. So how can anger or aggression be, you know, outside of a football field where it's like, no, we need you to go out there and be angry and aggressive. How can it be an okay thing?
Yeah. Well, I think firstly, everyone needs to be safe. Yeah. So that's essential. But what it can be is a reminder, a trigger, a point of reflection. And so that's the way that I see my own anger. Yeah. It bubbles up. And I used to do this thing where I would go, nah, that's not happening. You can't. And I'd just push it back down, not knowing that actually it's much more likely to explode later on. That's what happens. Because if you tell yourself that you should not or cannot be angry in a certain circumstance, rather than deal with it when it's at its smallest, you know, little sapling that's growing, and you go, actually, I'm a bit shitty about this thing, and it doesn't come with the fire, with the angst, really, because I think that's the thing that lots of people misunderstand. Anger is often wrapped in anxiety. It's wrapped in a fear that you've been misunderstood, you've been victimized, you've been disempowered, you know. All of the couples therapists always talk about it. It's like, where does this come from? Why are you fighting with them? It's because you feel misunderstood. It's because you feel your values have been, you know, clashed. And so we want to be able to get to the point where guys understand that this is something at its earliest point that is manageable, that is intervenable, and that is not going to be something that is going to harm them or somebody else.
And if they get to that point, if they get it there later on, when that flood of hormones that just the adrenaline and everything else, the cortisol, whatever else goes through your brain, the neurotransmitters, when they just explode in your head, and then your impulse control literally goes out the window, and now suddenly you're watching your hand punch someone else in the face. And afterwards you're like, whoa, hang on, who did that?
Yeah.
Why did I do that? I'm really sorry that just happened.
And that's the out-of-body experience. Yeah. That's exactly when that happens.
Yeah.
Whereas regulation, this is what we're seeking, really, is emotion regulation amongst all guys, which is that emotion regulation doesn't mean get rid of emotion. It means understand it and know when to turn it up and turn it down based on what's happening to you and why.
What do you say to someone who's, you know, you've got a client, I always find it funny how psychologists don't call them patients, they're clients. It's a weird kind of word that, like, it's the same thing.
We're trying to distance ourselves from medicine.
What, you don't have a doctor in front of your name?
I do.
Come on, man.
It's a PhD. I'm different. It's cool.
I'm not that kind of doctor.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm on board the plane.
Exactly.
I'm on the plane, but I can't help you.
Luckily, like 70% of things that happen on planes are panic attacks, so I've got those under control.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, you're not doing an emergency tracheotomy with a cocktail straw, which I'm sure I saw in a film once. It was a MASH episode. I can't remember. So when you're talking to someone about introspection, like say this is the first time that someone's hearing this conversation or they're trying to speak to their son or daughter about it, how would you begin to explain to someone about how to do it if they've never done it?
It was a really strange, because it feels like an innate skill. It feels like it's both a plaguing of humanity and also the greatest skill. It's our sentience. It's our cognitive ability. But when I was talking to this kid, he was probably 17, and I'm talking to him and he's going, I can't begin to understand. I was like, all right, close your eyes. You're sitting there right now, okay? And you do various mindfulness activities, but I started to just throw things at him, various statements about his mum, about, what had gone on with him at school the other day that he'd told me. And I was like, what is happening? And he continued to say for the first 10 minutes, he's like, there's silence. I'm thinking about what I'm doing tomorrow. And I was like, all right, okay, what are you doing tomorrow? That's the beginnings of an internal narrative. Bring it now. And I started to realize that the whole thing is just avoidance. He was terrified of the moment and his actual internal machinations.
Right.
They scared him because he'd gotten to the point where he had really angry, aggressive thoughts about his family, and he didn't want those. They were evil. They were horrible.
Right.
And so he turned off that part of his brain.
Wow.
Yeah. And then he started to be flooded with anger.
Right.
Which is what understandably happens. And the really important thing that I did with him there was, I don't do this thing which lots of therapists like to do, which is, okay, I can see that you're angry. Yeah. I just want to, especially if you're working with young guys, I amp up with them. I'm like, this is fucked.
Yeah.
I get there. I get to that point where I'm willing to just like sit with it rather than, I'm so sorry. It's like, no, that's not gonna do it, because you're telling them to come back down. Yeah, you need to sit there. You need to let it flood the room. Be okay with that as well.
That's extraordinary, because it just starts, I guess, with closing eyes helps, because it allows you to kind of, I guess, get in touch with your body a bit. And how do we know we're feeling an emotion? Because something in our body changes. Our breath quickens, our hands shake. For me, it's always in my tummy, which is weird when your toddler says, my tummy hurts. And you're like,
I gave that to you.
No, mate. Nah. I tell you what I'm trying to give him, which is, as you mentioned earlier, I'm just trying to give him emotional regulation. We've been doing breathing since we started with snake breaths.
Wow.
He was 1, I think, 18 months old, when he putting his helmet on, because he got a bit, I said, do your breaths, mate. Takes a big breath in. And then he just does it automatically, because he used to get, I think he got it caught. Got his skin caught under there. One of his, he's super chubby and he'd get his skin caught in the helmet. And now he just does it automatically. And like that in itself, I didn't learn to do that till I was in my 30s. So to start like that, amazing. And they do it heaps at daycare, and I hear about it from other mates who've got kids who are a bit older. They do heaps of that, just teaching them down regulation skills. Surely that kind of education at that stage in life, though it's kind of a bit late for blokes in their 30s and 40s when things get critical or acute, surely education at that stage in life that's the point to really embed those things.
Yeah. It's interesting because whenever I talk with parents and they're like, I didn't have trucks. I gave him, the opportunity to do whatever he wanted. I allowed all emotions in the room, and yet he's 12, 13 and he's just suddenly turned into this monster. And it's like, how did this happen? And it's like, that's a control situation, which is that if you embed really good values in a child, they're going to rebel against you, but they will come back.
Yeah.
They'll come back. They'll find home. But it's interesting what you said there about 30 and 40-year-old men, and even older. The suicide rate is worst in men in their 40s. Like that's where it sits, and it's increasing in that age bracket.
Jesus.
Yeah, because there's employment stresses, there's kids, there's the idea they lose friends. There's this social connection situation that goes on, and there seems to be there's a lot of focus on young guys. Everyone is really willing to engage with little kids and with, teenage boys because there's hope.
Yeah.
But, hopefully 30 and 40-year-olds are not beyond us. That has to be something that we are willing to grapple with, that we are willing to engage with, that we have a plan about how to talk with those guys.
People don't want to engage with 140 kilo incels sitting at home, on 8chan, writing horrible shit on the internet, working a shitty job and hating the world. People don't want to engage with that person, but that person's just as fucking forgotten.
They are definitely forgotten, and there is, I remember seeing Nitram about the Port Arthur massacres.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
Really, really full-on movie. And the whole first hour of the movie is this poor boy being fucking bullied left, right, and center. And everyone goes, this is the same idea, and I always talk about the notion that violence and suicide are two sides of the same coin.
Wow.
It's harming oneself or harming others.
Yeah.
It's this notion that you have felt that society does not care about you, and so you're going to inflict harm upon yourself or harm on others to reassert yourself. We would love to get to the core of that and go, power is not the answer here. Strength is not the answer. But we can also do a lot from an early intervention point to get men to look after one another, to realize early, not just when shit hits the fan, what is happening, how it's going, and to reduce what is, I saw the other day at the beach, these boys just like ripping on each other. And this idea that it's like Australian banter and it's good and it's in politics and it's everywhere. It's like, how is there a way that you can have humour that doesn't undermine someone's like sense of self, And I'm inculcated in this. This is a part of who I am as well. And so you start to take it away and you're like, don't take this away from me. I need this form of joke making in order to like survive for some reason. But it's painful. It's painful to so many people. And I think that that's what's going on. We see these 30, 40, 50-year-olds who are sitting in their basements going, you deserve everything that you get. And it's like, if you do not have any empathy for them, if you do not pull them towards the light, if you just push them further and further away, we're getting to a point where we're not going to be able to pull back the next generation of young men towards this idea of self-betterment, of equality, of togetherness, because they are isolated. They don't even have mates.
Yeah.
They've just got trolling.
Ugh. The groundbreaking stuff that Movember did with, for example, prostate cancer research, like that stuff is fascinating. I remember Garoni telling me that they would find out that someone would come to them for funding and they go, we've just come up with this brilliant idea, blah, blah, blah. They goes, cool. And we funded something exactly like that 3 years ago. They found this, they found that. If you think you can't improve on that, well, maybe try something else.
Yeah.
And that was, no one had ever really done that before because they were this central funding body, which was really, really interesting. But something like prostate cancer, I'm sure men love it because it sells. It is or it isn't malignant.
Take it out, cut it out, radio, whatever it might be.
There's a pathway.
Yeah.
When it gets to the complexities of family structure and dynamics and kids and stuff like that, and how does the research around the psychology part and the suicide prevention of Movember, how does that play out?
It's messy. And this is the thing, especially when we're talking to our fundraisers out there, we've got 6 million guys and women, incredible, numbers within our community who are wanting to know where the money goes, wanting to understand how we go about this stuff. And we've said to them, it took us a decade to get an understanding of what's happening in the prostate cancer world, and to start to get these drugs to the point where we are hoping that within the next decade or so, thanks to ours and others' help, prostate cancer will not kill men.
Wow.
So, and that has taken an understanding that there are so many of these little grassroots, researchers, whatever, doing all of this stuff and doubling up. And that's what we're witnessing in the mental health space. And so now I'm trying to go, what is happening? What is everyone trying to do? And what is evidence-based? Because there's a lot of this idea of what men want. It's the sequel, Helen Hunt and Mel Gibson. And I think that it's...
I'll pay it. I'll pay it.
I don't know why it hasn't happened. But
well, have you ever heard a Mel Gibson phone call? There's probably...
I think he's at his time. Yeah. Helen Hunt, though.
I think he's doing all right. He's okay.
He's all right.
He's okay for cash.
But what, there is this idea in the mental health world that like what men want is they want humor, they need clear communication, you need to speak to them in a solution-oriented way, and it's reducing us to the lowest common denominator consistently. And so what we're trying to do at the moment is go, all right, what's happening for young men in sports teams? What's happening for young men on TikTok? What's happening with middle-aged guys and their relationships? We're looking at all of the places where men are, and we're looking at the key risk factors that they deal with day to day. And we're going, actually, there has been far too much anecdotal evidence that's being thrown around, and that's why we're not seeing any movement in the statistics. There is just this idea that if we somehow get guys to just discuss what's happening, everything will be better. And it's not happening because you're seeing, we're doing it now, you see it all over the shop. Men are opening up and talking about what's happening to them. And it's not being listened to, it's not being embraced, and it's not going far enough, I don't think. And so understandably, there are a lot of women who are going, I do not want this emotional labor anymore, And so we need to find a way amongst one another, and that's what Movember is trying to do. That's what our movement is about, is don't only lean on each other, prop each other up, find out what is happening, and provide a foundation that is robust and that is life-saving, and not for just 1 month a year.
Because it's not for want of trying. The amount of active programs and things that are out there and helplines and all this kind of stuff is huge. And even in my lifetime, someone like me could have never spoken about the things that I've spoken about and felt okay. And it's profound to have that kind of opening. And we can't let perfect be the enemy of good, and sometimes awesome stuff takes a while. And unfortunately, with 6 people dying every day, it's extraordinarily urgent, unbelievably urgent for this to happen.
For sure. And so that requires an understanding that we've created a really good base here of, we've got the lifelines, we've got all of these services that are starting to open up, we've got conversations that are happening, and now we're at the point where we go, actually, how do we man wrap this? How do we give this a bit of gender sensitization to make sure that it meets the mark? I created a program with Movember called Men in Mind, which is when men go to see a therapist, 45% of them drop out because they just don't get what they need. They're not able to actually connect with the counsellor. They're speaking a different language. They've never done it before. It's really foreign and uncomfortable. So instead, we go, all right, we're going to upskill the practitioners. Because a decade ago, we go, men, you're not good enough. Why aren't you speaking in my language? Why aren't you communicating in a way that makes sense to me? Rather than going, actually, maybe the system is the issue. Maybe the fact that every therapist website with butterflies is the problem here. Because no woman wants that either. It's not the way to go.
It's kind of like a light cream. Someone's wearing linen, and there's
exactly. And it's like, oh, that's inviting. And I rock up, and I've done this. I've done an inventory of 100 psychology practices in Sydney, and I think there were 3 out of the 100. 97 of them had only women's health magazines, and it's like, you're welcome here. Come and chat with me in a way. It doesn't matter that the majority of psychologists are women. That doesn't matter. There's very clear evidence that women are very good at treating men. Yeah. They understand. They know what's going on. They've got an objectivity. It's great. The issue is that we are not creating a system that is male-friendly, and it doesn't need to be blokey, and this is the issue. What we do is that anytime I see someone who's starting out a new mental health movement, it's wrapped in blue, it's really blokey, and it's like, no, that's not the issue. We don't need this pendulum swing. We need to find a middle ground that is actually going to really embrace those different forms of masculinity and go, this is what a guy is grappling with today. This is what he might be grappling with tomorrow. And that's fine. That diversity of experience is totally fine.
What kind of lessons can we learn from outside of psychology? And I only say it because, you use the word grappling and it just flicked my head to the discipline around something like jiu-jitsu, for example. And there's a level of respect. There's a hierarchy involved. The whole thing is humility. The whole thing is like you're very rarely, if ever, up against anyone that you can defeat. You'll always be tapping out.
Yeah.
If you want to go higher, you have to submit, essentially. What can we learn from things like that where there's this combination of power and humility and restraint? What can we learn from things like that?
There's inherently psychology in all of this stuff, which is great, and I don't think that we should shy away from it. But it's really interesting that you bring that up, because when we look at the men's movement at the moment, it is people going, how do we lean into cold showers? Let's have all meat diets. Let's go and get ripped at the gym. Let's inbuild discipline, because that's the only antidote to chaos. And that's kind of how it's being sold at the moment. But I would love, and this is the thing, I would love to get to a point where we are able to do that within community, where we're able to actually connect with one another on a level where we don't have to go and find these spaces and places that are going to offer us some kind of doctrine, But there is so much power in and wisdom in things like jiu-jitsu, in Buddhist practice, in all of these things that many men seek out,
Yeah.
But it just feels that it is currently it's a bit of a it's like this I need to go in an opposite direction, and I need to push back and backlash against it rather than bring it in. I need to find a way to embed this into my life rather than push against the way that life is working.
In my own experience, I kind of saw what the doctors were trying to do with me, and I essentially built my own program. I built my own structure because, my brain was in so much chaos. Zac, I literally wrote down everything that I had to do that day. It was maybe 147 things long because it was granular as put shoes on, grab keys, walk outdoor, make sure locked behind me, go find bicycle, unlock bicycle, put on helmet. Like, it was that granular because I was so fucked. Every decision point was paralysis, all right? Because I was in that pressure of having to make the choice. But if I'd written the list the day before, there's no problem because I was out of the moment. And then I found that to be so useful, and it got me through the really hardest days. And so building in things like physicality, building in things like sobriety meetings, which is, being of service, there's mindfulness, there's aware of others, empathy, things like that, building that stuff into my day and creating that, going to see my doctor, building that stuff into my day. And then just making sure that was a part of every day was a huge key to me. Like, is there a place for that? Is there a place for building your own kind of way out of the woods?
100%. And this is where we talk about, self-reliance is a really key masculine ideal that everyone's like, no, let's get rid of it. When you need to connect with everyone else, you need to find a way to rely on everyone in times of need. That's just not going to happen. You need to find a language internally that is going to safeguard yourself in hard times, and you need to know when that is tipped over and you have reached your limit. And what you talk about there is a really clear understanding of your own needs, is an introspective ability to go, this is where I'm at, this is what I require, and this is how I'm going to manage it. And it is that insight that we're hoping, millions of guys are going to be able to seek out and discuss with others. Because that's the thing, if you're doing this on your own, which I think lots of men have heaps of practices that they do on their own, they're for some reason either ashamed to admit that they're doing it, or they think that talking about it is going to ruin it somehow. Rather, there is innate wisdom amongst us. How can we find a way to not get, and not proselytize either, but find a way to go, this worked for me, why don't we tweak it, why don't you give it a go? But that ritualistic, self-reliant understanding of how my day-to-day is going to run. If it worked, if it safeguarded you, if it kept you, safe.
Well, it also it gave me agency.
For sure.
It allowed me to
purpose.
Yeah, and that's a thing that I did want to ask you about. Like, how far back do we want to go? But there was a time when purpose was very fucking clear. Very clear. This is who you are. This is what you need to go and do. Off you go. She will do this. You will do that. There's the expectations. Off you pop. And that was it. And now with, I don't have to go and, we do have food in the front yard, but I don't have to go and till the soil every day to make sure we can eat.
Yeah.
And I don't have a job where I, have to go and punch a clock and, do stuff at a factory for hours all day. But there was a time when that was it. And not necessarily simpler times, everything had its complexity, but things were quite defined. So what role does purpose have in how we feel about ourselves and how, what role can purpose play in helping us get out of a tough spot?
Purpose is huge. That's what our movement is about. It was attempting, and I think what's really unique here is that Movember is one of very few, men's health charities. It doesn't happen. We're the biggest in the globe. It seems to be impossible for some reason to get men to coordinate behind something. That it seems to be really, really hard. And so the reason that we are promoting this narrative of togetherness through shared purpose is because we're now at a moment where there was really clear, delineated identity, back in the day. Everyone knew where they were going. We've now gotten to a point, thankfully, of female empowerment. And for some reason, men have gone, well, there's not enough space for us anymore. It's like, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make any sense. And rather than crafting something with depth, with diversity, with beauty, and instead we've lost room, we've lost an understanding of who we are. And so we're going to rebel. We're going to push against the wall that is here rather than going, actually, how can we redefine our purpose? How can we find a really nice niche place for myself to fit? It doesn't need to be steeped in history. It doesn't need to be what your father or your grandfather did. And that seems to be that everyone is arcing back to this time when it was like, oh, why did he get it so simple and I don't? It's like simplicity shouldn't be something that's necessarily sought. Complexity can be beautiful. It just requires acceptance that we're in a new time, there are new things happening, and purpose needs to be something that you talk about. And it shouldn't be something that is, it seems to be a deal breaker for young guys where they're just like, it's success or failure. And that seems to be purpose for them rather than understanding that their growth, and these esoteric things that are really hard to talk about should be the reason that you wake up in the morning.
Once we're done here, there's a bloke coming to do some plastering upstairs. He's probably 23. He's got a very fancy ute. Probably pays a shit ton every month to pay for it. What could that bloke? He's 23. He's got a ute full of tools. What does purpose look like for someone like that? He's probably living in Sydney, probably still with parents, if not in a share house with probably 5 other blokes. What does purpose look like for someone like that?
I think that sitting down and understanding his values is always really key, But I also just think it's like, what does he derive pleasure from? No one seems to be talking about joy. We always discuss when we talk about young kids, 4 or 5-year-old young boys, we've always got this idea that there is this regression of emotion, this reduction, whereby they lose all this sadness, We talk about how when they get to preschool, you slowly, through observational studies, are going to see young boys lose their sadness. They're going to lose that ability to actually emote in that type of way because it's not deemed acceptable. What they also lose in many instances is joy and happiness. And so when I sit down with lots of guys and talk to them about purpose, I ask them what they enjoy. I ask them what is meaningful to them. I ask them what, and their inability to articulate that, to even think about it, because the hustle is the thing that they've been taught. the idea that there is a grind, the idea that they need to suffer in order to get something meaningful out of life, rather than being able to actually access that part of themselves, which goes, who am I? What do I want? What do I like? You know, so for that guy who's coming, I think that his purpose should really gravitate towards what helps him grow, what helps him see. And this is the thing, it gets really, whenever I speak with a tradie, they're just like, what the fuck are you saying? Like, what is this?
Yeah.
And so we have to shift the language there around what gets him up in the morning, around, you know, if he is working like a dog and is making the money, what is he going to be doing with that? What is going to keep him kicking in many ways?
Do you ever talk to people like that? Like what effect their job has on other people? Because that's the work he's going to do today is going to transform the way we live in this house.
Yeah.
And that'll be that way for years.
For sure.
Do you ever talk to them about that sort of thing?
Yeah. It's funny because that doesn't come up for them. It doesn't feel meaningful to them. It feels just like but the tradies that I've spoken to before, I'm like, you know that you're providing a really important service, you know, that is, going to ease someone else's burden one way or another, especially given my soft hands and inability to fucking do anything. But it is that societal narrative around, you're useful, mate, you're useful, we need you.
Yeah.
That's not being discussed anymore.
I'm heading off to Japan in a couple of weeks for a work thing. And I remember last time I was there, I just got so envious, not only of like just the fucking trains, they run to the second, like boom. Yet it was the unbelievable pride that every person we encountered in a service position had in their role. The person who clicked our ticket, the person that we bought a water off. Audrey started crying when the train pulled out of the station. The guard saluted everyone on the platform. Like, I'm getting every one of you home to your family safely. That's what I'm here to do. Not, but I do another fucking 8 hours of this shit.
Yeah.
You know, like, fuck, it's the same thing. He's pulling the same levers. He's doing the same job. But
he's decided to find something greater.
Mate.
Yeah.
I was like, man, I could probably do with a bit of that. It's like the idea of like, what are you to another person? I guess in the recovery journey that I'm on, it is truly only in being of service to another person where the happiness truly arises. Things make me happy. Yeah. Being of service to another person, that's what makes me, that's what really gets me. And that's the thing that I really ticks my clock, I guess. You mentioned the young men on TikTok before. This is, I mean, it was Musically. If you look on Musically years ago, you'll find footage of me doing dances, 9-10 years ago. What have you seen in the research that you've been doing and the things that you're exploring? What have you seen about the effect of literally every 8 seconds seeing another thing go past your face? Possibly things that either make you upset or things that make you feel less than because you're not as ripped or don't have that colour Bugatti.
We're going straight for Bugattis.
Going straight for Bugattis. I've used a word that people who know.
Yeah.
Right. People who know.
Yeah. So we're about to, embark on a really exciting, and this is where Movember is going to be hopefully carving new ground, because TikTok is a perfect example. Social media more broadly is a perfect example of where alarmist narratives are going. This is where toxic masculinity is being bred. This is where it's being formed, it's being calcified, and we're losing young men. There is very little evidence to suggest that is the case.
Really?
Yeah. So no one has actually gone on and looked at, if a boy watches, firstly, how much are they watching? Yeah, we know that on average, a young person is on TikTok for about 2 to 2.5 hours a day.
Jesus fuck.
So if I'm coming in as a therapist once every 2 weeks for an hour and going, oh, let's think about these things, and they go home and they fucking scroll. I can't beat that. I can't compete with that. So the issue that I have with the way that social media is working is that, especially something like TikTok, if young men want to have, hopefully, that insight, that self-regulatory ability to go, I need to check out of this, there is nowhere to go. There is ostracism. Yeah, there is a social isolation that comes with that. And what we see, and this happens with eating disorder content and young women, regardless of whether they like the content, yeah, the longer they watch it, the more they get. And even if you are, and this is the really interesting psychological thing, the more disgusted you are by something, the more you dislike something, the more you're probably going to watch it because you're fascinated. It's a human situation. And so these young girls are watching more and more of this content to the point where we can predict whether or not a young girl has an eating disorder based on their algorithm.
Crikey.
And so we're starting to go, all right, is this actually happening with the manosphere, with this TikTok content that is based on incels, red pill, all of this dark shit? Are these young men being, brought into this new world that they can't escape? Because young guys are using TikTok as Google. So if they start to type stuff in to search, to understand the world, their algorithm has trapped them in this cycle of information that they think that they want. So we're in discussions with TikTok to get to the point where hopefully you can, get pop-ups that are going to redirect you. We see that a lot in the suicide space, that if you type something into Google, it will immediately go lifeline. It will send you in the right place. But at the moment, you can watch whatever you want on TikTok and it will drown you. And so we want to understand what impact it's having on young guys. But not only, everyone keeps talking about their anxiety or depression. I want to know what it does for loneliness. I want to know what it does for shame and guilt, what it does for ideas around sex, all of these, and they're all overlapping. And so we're going to find out over the next year exactly what is going on behind the scenes. But we cannot throw out the baby with the bathwater. We cannot go, let's get rid of all social media, because we can't even begin to quantify what the good is, let alone the bad. So we need to understand the Goldilocks zone, which is what we talk about, which is like, where's it actually helpful, and how can we go, yep, that's enough.
I talk about it a bit. The first car to ever go 100 kilometres an hour I think it was in 1890 something. Oh, no, sorry, 1912. It was 1912. It was an electric car, went 100 kilometres an hour.
Wow.
Victoria became the first state or territory anywhere in the world to mandate seatbelts in 1970. So it was 58 years of death, dismemberment, maiming, limbs being lost, lives being destroyed. I hope we don't have to wait that long.
Yeah. We're not very good at regulating things.
But it had such utility.
Yeah.
The vehicle had such utility. We're like, yeah, it's bad that people die. And this one goes faster.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm sure we will figure it out. How do you even begin? Where is the research being done here in Australia? Do you guys, does Movember you're a global organisation. Do you have a way you look at funding, around the world?
Yeah, definitely. So as the head of research, I've got a team, which is great, but we also partner with endless universities and different organisations to make sure that we can, you want a level of independence as well. But what we do with the TikTok research, for instance, we're doing that in the US, UK, and Australia, because very different markets. And at the start, we were like, we're not going to go to the US. It's a shit show, and this is way too complex. And, we had to sit down. We were like, what are we afraid of here? What is, it's research. Asking these questions, we should be open to it. So in partnering with, some Canadian universities, some Australian universities, we start to go, what are the questions that we need to ask, and how do we go about, really fundamentally getting to the bottom of this stuff that everyone seems to love to write a bloody op-ed about with no data.
Yeah. Everyone's
just throwing it out there and saying this is harming our boys. It's like, if you read any book at the moment that is out on modern masculinity, 75% of it is going to be risk and problem-based. Everything is broken. Everything is fucked. There is no light in the tunnel. Rather, can we switch that and go, can I have 75% of solutions, but no one has any?
Right.
No one has any at the moment. Certain people are like, we should start boys a year later at school. It's like, that's not a solution,
So I guess people looking for possibility, looking for something to change. Yeah. People want to make something different than the way it is now. For people who either are the parent or the the sibling of a young man, or even a man in their 40s, you could talk to me about purpose, you talk to me about connection, and you tell me about, because these seems like two things that are kind of within our control if our brains are working well. What are some things that people can start to do today? Like, because the research is going to take some time. What are some things that people can start to do today for themselves or for the men in their lives?
I think we need to find safe spaces to have these discussions. Like, I can't remember the last time I went to a pub and I saw a group of guys sitting around and talking about a meaty topic that is happening in their lives, like fatherhood. You know, we're getting to the point now where that's tipping over, but it seems to happen. Mental health conversations more broadly are still happening in dark rooms, in back corners. You know, we want to be able to bring this into the light. And so being willing to hear any answer is, especially for parents of teenage boys, it's like sitting down and being willing and able to hear whatever happens. And you're probably going to get a couple grunts for the first 10 minutes, but it will flow if you just sit back and just allow it space. And talking to a young man about purpose, and this is the thing that parents don't do a lot of. They don't talk about their own journey. They talk about their past journey, about what they overcame, which is what we discussed before. But they don't talk about the fact that if I'm in my 40s, 50s, or 60s, I'm still working this shit out.
Yeah,
I'm still in it. And I'll do it alongside you. And it's just really, adulthood is just an extension of adolescence, where we're just like, oh God, what happened? Who am I? Where does it go? It just, thankfully, some of the volume at times gets turned down. But I think we want to be providing a space for young guys to fuck up, to, in a safe environment, ask impossible questions that we might not have the answers to, that we are willing to say, I don't know, let's find out together. And that's kind of what's going on at the moment with mates is that there seems to be this 2 minutes of, let's get a bit vulnerable and shut down. It's either too much, you've phrased it the wrong way, it's too difficult for me to deal with, or let's just rock up with some banter because I'm uncomfortable. And so many people ask, I've been kicked out of so many bloody WhatsApp groups, it's like out of control, because porn will be sent in the middle of a work day. And I'm like, nah. And they're like, you're out. And that's a very hard thing for someone who wants connection, who wants to be able to be embraced by his mates. You need to find that, and that's where the purpose kind of comes in, which is that I believe that me having these discussions with these guys is actually hopefully going to elevate them and provide them with a safer space. But it's cooked.
But it's also in giving permission to be, and as you mentioned earlier, it is in modeling what it is to be a man and to have a masculinity that is beneficial to yourself and those around you. Aside from healthy or unhealthy, just a beneficial version of masculinity. What is something that's purpose driven? What's something that's useful? What's something that makes the world that you live in a better place for you and people around you? Because ultimately, we are social creatures, and that. Like it comes down, as you mentioned, it comes down to, what's going on with me. Do I feel good or bad about this? Am I able to communicate it in a way that makes sense? Giving permission for each other for not understanding, because every learning is based on a mistake. Everything. Yeah. Nobody gets anything right perfectly. No one just goes, I know how to ski. No, you fucking fall over for a week and it hurts, but you want to do it. Getting kicked out of group chats, and I've been kicked out of group chats, it comes back to the avoidance. It's like the other people in there don't want to actually have the discussion about why it's not great that their friend doesn't like this thing. It's easy to get you out versus it's that avoidance. So, if I know anything about avoidance, it just makes shit worse. So it's just be curious. I don't know.
And this is where our new mantra of sorts around, because we live in a world now where being a men's health organisation is tricky. Yeah, it just fundamentally is. And what we'd want to show is that healthy men, healthy world. That's how this works. Yeah, we're not here for men at the exclusion of others. We're actually here at men for the inclusion of others. We're here to understand guys so that they can flourish, so that they can give back, so that they can be powerful but respectful, honest, caring individuals. And what that will do is fundamentally reduce carer burden for women who are holding all of this shit themselves. It will improve the education system where, at the moment it's like every kid has ADHD. It's like, no, actually they just learn differently. Boys are feeling differently. They embody, feelings in different ways. If we can just understand the way that men are relating to the world and have a bit more empathy for that, then we'll be able to actually, move forward in a way that's going to hopefully shift the dial on lots of these statistics, because they're dire. They're dire for everybody.
Everybody. When I'm very grateful to be associated with Movember, and I have been for many years now. Because when I met the guys, they looked like the blokes at school who used to bully me.
Yeah.
They looked exactly the same. I was like, oh, hang on a fucking second. Yet they spoke with empathy and kindness for the other men around them in a way that, and they were like ex-military, ex-military guys. I'm like, hang on a second. I'd never seen that, ever. I was like, oh, this is good. Okay. Yeah, all right. I'm here. And by this point, I'm already fucking vegan, and I'm like way out the edge here.
Yeah.
And it is. It's just in modeling that and trying to be that for others. And yeah.
I'm willing to embrace that a guy will come in a flawed way with a flawed history, as we've all got, but being open to go, what's going on right now? What matters to you? What matters to you, and how can I help? And that's what our movement is kind of based on, and that's what we want to move forward with.
Life is like, think of how good you feel when you solve a puzzle. Like even a little one that I do upstairs with Wolfgang. You feel good. It's like, yeah, I figured it out. Every day is just figuring out a puzzle. That's it.
Yeah.
Did you figure out a puzzle today? I did. Great. Wake up. Box is open. Let's try again tomorrow. That's all it is, man. Thanks for coming by, man.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Thanks for the 20 minutes of stuff that we talked about before. I appreciate that.
Anytime.